The cameras snap on and the studio feels like a pressure cooker. Denzel leans in, not shouting, not flailing, just laser calm and deadly clear. "You didn't just mismanage casinos," he says, voice low enough to make the audience hold its breath. "You turned bankruptcy into a business model. And now you're running the same play on a country that doesn't get to walk away from the bill." Trump tries to laugh it off, but the mic catches the dry swallow. Denzel doesn't blink. Vendors stiffed. Contractors dragged into court. Students sold air. "You call that deals? That's debt dressed up in gold paint." 30 seconds in, the crowd is already split, half gasps, half applause, a few angry boos, and the control room cuts to a tight two-shot as Trump leans forward, red tie flashing like a hazard light. Denzel stays planted. America isn't a casino floor you can comp after you lose. It's people's savings, mortgages, pensions, and futures. The studio falls so quiet you can hear the desk clock tick. Trump points, searching for the line that always works. Denzel beats him there. "So let's do what you hate most," he says. "Let's look at the receipts." Trump forces a smile. "You're a great actor, Denzel." "Amazing. But you don't know balance sheets." Denzel's answer is a scalpel. "I know the difference between profit and damage. One you report. The other your neighbors live with." The audience murmurs, producers wave for calm. Denzel doesn't raise his voice, he lowers it. "You turned Chapter 11 into a lifestyle. And now you're asking America to co-sign." A graphic flashes to tease the segment ahead, Bankruptcy Playbook. And the clock hits 30 as Trump's jaw sets, palms flattening on the desk. Denzel nods once, like a referee signaling it's time to start keeping score. Trump's jaw tightened as he leaned closer to the mic, trying to summon the same bravado that had carried him through 1,000 rallies. "Bankruptcy is strategy, Denzel," he snapped, his voice laced with defiance. "Only losers don't know how to use the system. I won. Every time. That's why I'm here and you're sitting there preaching." His hands cut through the air like a salesman sealing a deal. But Denzel didn't flinch. He leaned back just slightly, like a man watching a storm roll in without fear. "You call stiffing electricians, drywall crews, and local caterers a win?" he shot back. "Tell that to the man whose small business folded because your empire couldn't be bothered to pay its invoices. Tell that to the students who paid for Trump University and walked away with nothing but debt. You don't build a nation on the backs of people you crush, you bury it." The studio's audience murmured louder now, a ripple that turned into a wave when Denzel leaned forward again. His eyes locked on Trump like a spotlight cutting through smoke. "And the worst part? You spin it like genius. Bankruptcy as art. Fraud as leadership. But here's the truth, you didn't just bankrupt companies. You bankrupted trust. And you're doing it again with the presidency." Trump's face flushed, his fingers drumming on the table in irritation. "Fake news. Lies. The people love me, Denzel, they know I fight for them." "Fight for them?" Denzel countered, his voice sharpening. "You fought for tax breaks for yourself. You fought for photo ops. You fought for applause. Meanwhile, America's drowning in debt you didn't lift a finger to ease. You say you're a builder? No, you're a demolition crew with better branding." The crowd erupted, some with claps, others with angry shouts. The moderator's hand shot up, trying to cool the chaos. But the damage was done, Trump's armor had been cracked, and Denzel wasn't done pressing. Trump slammed a palm on the desk, his voice booming with that signature blend of outrage and bluster. "You don't know what it takes to lead, Denzel. You're an actor. A performer. You read lines somebody else wrote. I ran a business empire. I ran a country. You don't get to lecture me." The audience gasped, half in shock, half in anticipation. Denzel didn't blink. He sat forward slowly, his tone cool but edged with steel. "You're right about one thing, Trump. I am an actor. And I can spot a performance when I see one. What you've been doing for years isn't leadership, it's theater. Bad theater. A cheap show with America as the stage and ordinary people as props. And you've been cashing in while the lights dim. Trump pointed a finger across the table, his lips curling. People voted for me. Twice. They knew I was the only one strong enough to shake up Washington. Denzel leaned in, his voice dropping to a near growl that somehow carried to every corner of the room. Strength isn't bankrupting casinos while workers beg for paychecks. Strength isn't dodging accountability when contractors take you to court. Strength isn't hiding behind lawyers while families lose their homes. That's cowardice, plain and simple, and America has paid the bill for your cowardice. A stunned hush fell over the studio. Even Trump seemed momentarily rocked, his usual counterpunch faltering as the audience's silence turned into clapping, then cheers. Denzel didn't let up. He gestured toward the crowd. These people aren't investors you can stiff, Trump. This is the nation you swore to serve. And every time you lied, every time you ducked responsibility, every time you put yourself first, you made America weaker. You bankrupted more than companies. You bankrupted faith. You bankrupted hope. Trump's jaw tightened again, his face red as he reached for the mic, but the room was no longer his. The momentum had shifted, Denzel owned the stage, and everyone knew it. Trump finally grabbed the microphone, his knuckles white as he tightened his grip. His voice thundered, louder than before, trying to drown out the echo of Denzel's words. You call me a coward? You call me a fraud? I built towers that kissed the sky. I brought jobs back, I made America respected again. People lined up to see me because they know I win. Winning is what I do. But the fury in his tone betrayed something else, panic. The more he shouted, the more it sounded like desperation, like a man clawing for control of a stage that was slipping away. Denzel leaned back in his chair, deliberately calm, and let Trump's rant burn itself out. Then, with a quiet chuckle that cut sharper than any shout, he answered, "Towers don't make a man, Trump. And gold letters on a building don't erase the debt you left behind. The truth is, every empire you built was propped up by others, by contractors you never paid, by workers you left behind, by taxpayers who covered your losses when you couldn't. You didn't build America up, you hollowed it out." The audience broke into a wave of applause, some rising to their feet. Cameras zoomed in on Trump's face, red, sweating, eyes darting as though searching for an escape. You talk about winning? Denzel pressed, his voice firm and steady. Winning isn't cheating the system until it cracks. Winning isn't turning the White House into your personal cash register. Winning is lifting people up, not tearing them down. And right now, the only thing you've built is a legacy of collapse. Trump slammed the desk again, his voice cracking. That's a lie. Fake news. But Denzel didn't even flinch. He simply turned toward the cameras, looking straight into the lens, bypassing Trump entirely. America deserves better than a man who treats it like another bankrupt casino. And tonight, the people watching know it. The roar from the crowd drowned out Trump's protests. The energy in the room had shifted so completely that even the producers in the control booth were whispering. This was no longer a debate. This was a dismantling. Trump leaned forward, pointing his finger at Denzel, his voice trembling with anger. You don't know what it takes to lead this country. You're an actor, a Hollywood puppet. You memorize lines, I make history. The insult was sharp, but it barely landed. Denzel's calm half-smile returned, the kind that seemed to slice through noise with quiet certainty. He adjusted his jacket, leaned closer to the mic, and replied, History? Is that what you call bankruptcies, lawsuits, and broken promises? Because if that's history, then you're the author of a tragedy. The studio went still for a moment, as though bracing for the explosion. Trump's face tightened, and he began rattling off rehearsed lines about the economy, trade, and power. But Denzel interrupted with precision, his voice rising for the first time. You call me an actor? Fine. But the difference is when I step off a stage, the lights go out. When you step off your stage, real people suffer. Families lose their homes. Veterans lose their benefits. Workers lose their wages. That's not a performance, Trump, that's a betrayal. The crowd erupted. Cheers, claps, and gasps mixed into a single wave of sound. Even the moderators couldn't contain their own shock. Trump tried to shout over the noise, "You're twisting everything. Nobody has done more for this country than me." Denzel raised his hand, silencing the audience instantly. He leaned in with words that cut through like glass. "You think leadership is about making everything revolve around you. But real leadership is about responsibility, not applause. You don't carry America, you drain it." Every camera in the room stayed locked on Denzel. The moment carried the weight of something historic, an exchange that would be replayed millions of times before the night was over. Trump opened his mouth to respond, but the look on his face said it all. He wasn't debating anymore. He was fighting for control of a narrative that had already slipped away. Trump slammed his palm against the desk, his voice cracking as he shouted, "You're trying to humiliate me on live TV. You think you can stand there and lecture me about responsibility? I built towers, I built an empire. You've built nothing." The crowd shifted uncomfortably, the tension now unbearable. Denzel, however, didn't flinch. He leaned forward, locking eyes with Trump, and answered with a calm ferocity. "You built towers, yes. But you built them with other people's money. With unpaid contractors. With lies stacked higher than the concrete. And every one of those lies is now collapsing in front of the American people." Gasps filled the room. Trump's eyes darted to the audience, hoping for support, but the crowd wasn't with him. Denzel pressed harder, his voice gaining momentum. "You keep calling yourself a builder. But what you really built is a pattern: cheat, sue, bankrupt, repeat. And now you've taken that same blueprint and laid it over this country. That's why America is breaking." Trump tried to interrupt, "That's fake news." Denzel cut him off sharply, his tone slicing through Trump's words like a blade. "Fake news? These are court filings, lawsuits, testimonies. Facts, Trump. Hard, undeniable facts. You can't scream your way out of this one." The audience erupted, half in cheers, half in stunned silence. The moderators struggled to bring order, but the scene had already spiraled. Denzel raised his voice over the noise, landing a final blow. "The truth is simple. You didn't just bankrupt businesses, you bankrupted trust. And a president who bankrupts trust has no business leading a nation." For the first time, Trump didn't respond right away. He stared at Denzel, his mouth opening and closing, but no words came. The silence was deafening. The camera zoomed in on Denzel's face, firm, unyielding, and absolutely in control of the moment. The moderator leaned in nervously, clearly aware that the studio was no longer under his control. "Gentlemen, please," he began, but Denzel's voice thundered over the plea. "Don't call this leadership," Denzel declared, his words echoing through the studio like hammer strikes. "Leadership is sacrifice. Leadership is putting the people above your own ego. And yet, every step you've taken has been about one thing, Donald Trump. Not America. Not the veterans. Not the workers you left unpaid. Just you." Trump's face turned crimson. He pointed a trembling finger at Denzel. "You think you're so righteous, but you don't understand the art of winning." "I win, Denzel. I always win." Denzel let out a sharp laugh, shaking his head slowly. "You call this winning? Look around you. A country divided, allies distrusting us, families struggling to pay rent while billionaires get richer. If this is your idea of winning, then America can't afford another one of your victories." The audience broke into roaring applause. Trump's jaw tightened, but he pushed forward. "You're twisting everything. The economy was booming under me. People loved me." Denzel fired back without missing a beat. "Loved you? Or feared you? There's a difference. You demanded loyalty, but never gave it back. You treated America like one of your failed casinos, drain the profits, declare bankruptcy, and walk away while everyone else holds the bag." The crowd erupted again, some standing, clapping furiously, while others shouted in disbelief. The clash had gone far beyond politics, it had become a raw battle of morality versus self-preservation. Trump leaned into the microphone, his voice shaking with rage. "You're nothing but an actor pretending to be wise. I ran the free world." Denzel took a slow step forward, lowering his voice to a dangerous calm that cut through the chaos. "And you nearly broke it. That's your legacy, Trump. Not the towers, not the rallies, not the slogans. Your legacy is failure dressed up as power." The silence that followed was crushing. Even the cameras seemed to hold still, capturing a man cornered by truth and another standing tall in it. Trump gripped the edge of the podium, his knuckles widening as he struggled to reclaim control. His voice cracked with desperation. "You're painting me as some villain, Denzel, but you forget, I gave this country strength. Jobs. Security. Respect." Denzel leaned forward, his eyes narrowing with intensity, his voice steady but searing. "Respect? You can't buy respect with slogans and gold letters on a building. Respect comes from honesty, from keeping your word. You promised to drain the swamp, but you built a bigger one and sat at the center of it. You didn't respect America, you exploited it." The crowd stirred, a wave of murmurs spreading as people turned their heads, nodding or shaking in disbelief. Trump tried to interrupt, but Denzel cut him off with a raised hand. "And jobs? You keep saying you created jobs, but what about the workers you cheated? The contractors you stiffed? The small businesses that collapsed because you refused to pay them while you strutted around calling yourself a billionaire? You left them ruined. That's not strength, that's predatory." Trump's face twisted in fury. He slammed his fist on the podium. "That's a lie. Fake news garbage. I built an empire, and no one, worked harder than me to keep this country great." Denzel's voice sharpened, slicing through the noise. "Empire? That empire is rotting. And the truth is, you didn't build it with hard work. You built it by cutting corners, bullying the weak, and pretending the losses didn't exist. And now you're doing the same to America, masking decline with cheap showmanship. You think if you shout fake news loud enough, the truth will vanish. But the truth doesn't vanish, Donald. It exposes you." The audience erupted again, applause mingling with gasps. Some stood, pointing at Trump, chanting, "Truth! Truth," while others jeered, trying to drown it out. The atmosphere crackled with tension, the studio transformed into a courtroom of public opinion. Trump shook his head furiously, jabbing a finger toward Denzel. "You're a fraud, Washington. You don't know politics. You don't know the weight of leadership." Denzel, calm but unyielding, delivered the blow. "I don't need to know the weight of lies to recognize a liar. Leadership isn't crushing others to lift yourself. It's lifting others so the country rises with you. And that's the one thing you never understood." The silence after those words wasn't empty, it was heavy, like the whole nation was holding its breath, waiting to see how much further this confrontation would cut. Trump's jaw clenched, and his voice rose into a near shout. "You think you can stand there and lecture me about leadership? You're an actor. You pretend for a living. You don't know what it takes to face enemies, to stand at the top, to make decisions that shape history." His words dripped with anger, each syllable meant to diminish Denzel. But Denzel didn't flinch. He simply leaned closer to his microphone, his tone low yet powerful enough to pierce the noise. "You keep confusing the spotlight with leadership. There's a difference. Acting is about portraying truth through art. But you've turned politics into a stage play, only the script is built on lies, and the audience is paying the price." The crowd exploded with reactions, half cheering wildly, half booing Trump's outburst. Cameras zoomed in on Denzel's face, calm but fierce, his eyes locked on Trump with an expression that mixed disappointment and defiance. He continued, "Enemies? The truth is, the biggest enemy you've ever faced isn't foreign, it's accountability. Every time it knocks on your door, you call it fake. Every time someone challenges you, you label them traitors. But America deserves better than a man who hides from the mirror. Trump's face reddened, sweat glistening under the studio lights. He gripped the podium harder, trying to steady himself. You're twisting everything. I fought for this country. I gave my life to it. Denzel's voice thundered now, cutting through like a blade. No, Donald. You fought for yourself. Every broken deal, every contractor you bankrupted, every community you left in ruins, it was always about you. America was never your cause. It was your stage, your brand, your game. And tonight, the curtain is coming down. The studio roared, applause echoing like a verdict. Even those who had doubted began to murmur agreement. Trump's mouth opened, but no words came. He looked cornered, caught in a truth too sharp to dodge. Denzel stood straighter, his presence commanding the entire room. This isn't about politics anymore. It's about morality. And the moral bankruptcy you brought to your empire is the same one you're bringing to America. The question now isn't whether people see it, they do. The question is whether they'll let it continue. A chilling hush spread across the studio. The cameras panned across faces in the audience, anger, shock, and realization etched into their expressions. It was no longer just a debate. It was a reckoning. The tension in the studio was unbearable. You could almost hear the collective heartbeat of the audience as Trump slammed his hand on the podium, desperate to reclaim control. You're lying. You're twisting my record, twisting the truth. Nobody has done more for this country than me. His voice cracked, and for the first time, it wasn't commanding, it was pleading. Denzel let the silence hang for a moment, then leaned forward with piercing calm. The truth doesn't need twisting, Donald. It stands on its own. And tonight, it's standing in front of you. His words landed heavy, each one echoing like a hammer striking steel. The cameras caught every detail, Trump's flushed face, the sweat forming on his brow, and Denzel's steady, unshakable gaze. The contrast was undeniable, one man unraveling, the other unyielding. You say nobody has done more for this country, Denzel continued, but tell me, what do you call bankrupting communities, mocking veterans, dividing neighbors, and selling out the soul of America for your own profit? That's not leadership. That's betrayal. The audience erupted into cheers so loud the microphones peaked. Trump raised his hand as if to wave it all away, but his gestures only made the moment more desperate, more chaotic. Then Denzel delivered the final blow, his voice calm yet devastating. You bankrupted businesses. You bankrupted trust. And now, you're bankrupting the very spirit of this nation. America isn't your brand, Donald, it's our home. And we won't let you burn it down. The studio went wild. Applause thundered like an earthquake, shaking the air with raw energy. Trump stood frozen, his lips moving but no sound coming out, as if the weight of Denzel's words had silenced even him. Denzel didn't wait for a rebuttal. He straightened, gave one last sweeping glance to the audience, and spoke directly into the camera. America deserves truth. America deserves strength. And America deserves better than this. With that, the debate was over, not because it ended on schedule, but because the room had chosen its verdict. Trump looked small, diminished, a man cornered by his own history. The broadcast cut to commercial, but the damage was already done. Social media was already exploding, hashtags flying across screens, clips replaying on endless loops. Denzel's words were no longer just part of a debate, they had become part of history. Tonight wasn't just another debate. It was a mirror held up to power. While Trump tried to dodge, deny, and distract, the truth stood firm. Denzel didn't come to play politics, he came to remind America that leadership is about integrity, not profit, about unity, not division. And as the room erupted, one thing became crystal clear. America is done with lies, and the people are ready to demand better. This was more than words, it was a turning point.